Hi, this is Debbie from Organic Oasis in Northern California. Have you ever wished that you could find a recipe that was easy to make, delicious, and healthy, and everyone in your family loved it? Well, I think this might be the one. If you watch this video, I'm going to teach you how to make a soup from a rotisserie chicken after you've eaten the chicken and had it for dinner. Instead of throwing the bones away, I'm going to show you how to use those bones and that carcass to make a delicious soup. You can also use any ingredients, types of things that you have at home or growing in your garden at the time. So stay tuned and let's start cooking. So everybody I recommend should own a crock pot. If I had one kitchen gadget that I needed that I couldn't live without, it would be my crock pot. I've had one since I was like 17 years old, and I've been using it ever since. It's just the best appliance or kitchen gadget that you can have. And this recipe, we'll be using it. We'll be cooking this on high for 4 hours or low for 8 hours. And here's the great tip. You can put all the ingredients in the crock pot at night, put it in your refrigerator, and the next morning before you go about your business, go to work or whatever, put it in your crock pot, turn it on, and at the end of the day, you have a little bit of prep, but you'll have a delicious meal for your family. So let me show you how we do this. So Tomato Tim and I buy our organic chicken, whole chickens from Costco, and we get 2 chickens in a bag, and I usually just put them in the freezer until I want to use them. Then last night, what I did was I air fried my chicken, and that's a really great recipe. It can cook. Your chicken can air fry. It only takes an hour. You flip it once, and you can just season it, and it's lovely. So what I do is after I cook my chicken and eat the chicken dinner, which mostly we cut the chicken breasts off, I'm just left with all these pieces, bones and skin and meat. And what I do is I just go ahead and I usually will put it in one of my bags that I have. I have these mesh bags, and I usually will just put the entire chicken into the mesh bag and I will put it in the crock pot. Now, the mesh bag that I normally use is now being used in the freezer in the refrigerator with holding a lot of vegetables. I've been using these bags for vegetables because we're harvesting so many. So instead I just took my cheesecloth and just wrapped up the chicken. And so I'm going to be cooking it in this. Now, you definitely want to cook your chicken in this recipe in some type of a container because we're going to be taking it out and stripping the meat off of the bones. Now, the great thing about this recipe is that this is really a bone broth recipe. So we are getting all the nutrition of the bones. The bones will be cooking. I know when you make bone broth, you're cooking, wow, maybe for days. You've got your chicken bones in there cooking, but this doesn't cook that long, but it's still enough to get some nutrients out of the bones. When I make this recipe, the bones, they're not completely rubbery and soft, but definitely you get some of the good stuff out of the bones. Next, we're going to add 2 quarts of water. Next, we add a teaspoon of salt. And here's where, if your chicken has a lot of salt in it, and some chickens, when you buy them, they do have a lot of salt in them. It's sort of how they prepare the chicken to purchase in a grocery store. But some chicken has more salt than others. And this organic chicken that I buy from Costco, it doesn't have as much salt as some of the other chickens that I've purchased in the past. I believe Safeway, there's actually a chicken you can buy with no sodium added to it, but they don't actually sell the whole chickens like that. But you can hold off on adding salt if you want until you're finished with your soup, and then add to taste. I add just a little bit of salt. It calls for 1 teaspoon, but I'm going to add maybe a half a teaspoon to it right now to season it. My experience is once the soup is done, I don't need to add any more salt, but I just add a little tiny bit of salt now. And then you're going to add some pepper, about a 1/4 teaspoon. I'm just going to give it a swirl. Again, salt and pepper is always something you get to add more after you cook it and when the soup is finished. Next, you can add some herbs, and the recipe book actually calls for a tablespoon of dried parsley leaves, half a teaspoon of marjoram, and a bay leaf. And they ask you to put it into a 3-inch square of cheesecloth so that your soup is more clear. The broth would be clear. So when I'm in a hurry, I just throw the herbs right into this soup. I don't worry about it. When I'm eating it, it's delicious. I don't care if I find herbs floating in my soup. However, I did purchase this, and it's just like it's a tea bag, and it's really great for putting your herbs in when you're making soup. So I just harvested this parsley from outside, so I could just stick the parsley right in here. It calls for a bay leaf. I stick my bay leaf right in here, and then, it does keep the soup a little cleaner. And here's my marjoram, and I'm just going to put in about a half a teaspoon of marjoram. And I'll just stick that in like that. Now, the great thing about this soup is you can add any herbs that you would like to this pot of soup. And over the years, I've changed it a lot. Today, I'm showing you just the basic recipe. And basically, the recipe just calls for a tablespoon of dried parsley, which I put in fresh parsley, half a teaspoon of marjoram leaves, and a bay leaf. But you can add so many other herbs that you want to add to this. And it just tastes so delicious. And the soup, every time I make it, it changes with whatever I add to it, but it's always been delicious. So one of the things I'm going to add is a pepper. Now, the recipe does not call for peppers, but I like to put a little kick in my soup, and I happen to have these growing outside, so why not? Again, if you like pepper, you could actually add a red pepper, green pepper, any kind of peppers you want to this. I could cut this into pieces and stick it in the bag so that I don't have actually pepper in my soup. That's optional. I'm going to add the pepper right into the pot. Usually when I make my soup, I do use my handy little Hamilton Beach mini chopper here, because in my soup, I do like it I want more of the soup. I guess it's hard to explain it, but like when I put onion in my soup, I don't want pieces or chunks of onion in my soup. So I like to chop this onion very, very, very small, diced to the point where when the soup cooks for 4 to 8 hours, it just dissolves into the soup and you don't notice that it's there. So you can make a more chunky style soup by leaving the pieces whole and big, or you can make a more blended type of chicken soup with, the smaller you chop the pieces. If you watch my cooking videos, you're going to notice that most of the time I like to leave pieces. I like to leave texture in my food. But in this particular soup, you're going to have shredded chicken, and you're going to have some pasta noodles. So I just want the broth as a flavor. I want it for flavor, not necessarily for the texture. So now that's why I'm going to put it in the chopper and just chop it up very finely. So using the mini chopper, here's how my onion came out. There's no way I could chop my onion this small, even if I tried. So this mini chopper is great for that. And the soup, by the time the soup is ready, you won't even see onion inside of it in the soup. It'll just kind of dissolve right into the soup broth. So now I'm going to cut my pepper, and I'm hoping it's not too hot that I'm going to end up coughing and sputtering. Yeah, it's pretty spicy. I'm going to take this over to my sink and take out all the seeds. I'll be right back. This is a medium jalapeno pepper, but it is pretty spicy. And I almost started coughing by breathing the vapors. So I'm trying not to do that. I'm going to cut this. I'm not going to use my chopper for this. I'm going to just cut it into little pieces. I think putting one pepper in for me will not be too much. Usually you barely taste it. I mean, I would think I would have to put in like 3 or 4 of these to really get the soup really hot and spicy. Okay. I'm going to move this to the side and move on to the next thing. Okay, so the recipe calls for 2 celery sticks, and I'm going to put in 3 small ones. I'm going to rinse them real quick. Just going to go ahead and cut them here. All this is going to go into my compost. So I could go ahead and add these to the mini chopper. And when I'm in a hurry, I usually do. But I like the onion very, very small, and I like it to be dissolved into the broth. I don't actually mind having pieces of celery or carrots in the soup. So today I'm going to just chop these like this and put them in like this and not put them in the little Hamilton Beach chopper. Of course, if you're in a hurry, just use your chopper and do it all in the chopper. So into the pot goes the peppers and the carrots. I mean the celery, excuse me. You can just kind of lift up the chicken and push the vegetables down. I could have put all the vegetables in first, but I actually took the chicken last night and put it in my crock pot and just stored it in there until I was ready to make the soup. And back to using the little mini chopper again. We add carrots, and it calls for 1 carrot. And since all I have is these, the little cut and peel baby carrots, it's easier for me to just pour them in here and chop them up versus trying to chop these little mini carrots. And I usually don't count them or measure them. I just fill up the bowl and just chop them and put them all in. So as you can see, watching this video, you're probably getting the idea that this is not just any old chicken soup. This is a creative soup that you can actually make any way you want. It almost turns this into a delicious chicken bone broth vegetable soup, which I really love. So now we're going to blend this up, chop it up, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, that took less than 2 seconds. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in here, and you will see that, you know, these mini choppers, you can actually almost choose how big you want it to chop. If you run it a long time, you get really tiny pieces. You can chop it into medium pieces. There's a lot of ways you can do this. You can, if you want to get fancy, you could spiralize some of your vegetables and put them in. I'm going to put the recipe under the description, but you'll see that the way I'm making this soup is not really the way that I've changed it so much since I've been making this. Like I said, I have been making this recipe for 40 years, probably 10 times a year, which is 400 times. So after 400 times, I've changed a lot of things. I'm going to go ahead and put in my spice bag and just tuck it right down in here. Here's where we get creative. So I've made pretty much the original soup from the original recipe, except I added a pepper. And now I just harvested these green beans from our garden. We have a lot of green beans out there, and I've been freezing them, but they're really great. So I decided I'm just going to quickly put these into the soup. I'm just going to add some fresh green beans to the soup. And I'm going to cut them up into like 1-inch pieces. They'll cook for about, 4 to 8 hours. And so they'll get nice and soft and cooked, and all their vitamins and nutrition benefits will go into the soup along with the bone broth and all the other yummy vegetables we're putting in here. I like to take off the little pointy ends, even though they soften too, but it's just, I like to cut them off. So these, I'm not going to put in tons of green beans, but I'm just going to put in like a handful like this, just because we have all these green beans in the garden to use. I also have a Palermo Italian zucchini that I harvested. And so I'm just going to put a little bit of this in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to save half of this because I want to make some zucchini bread. But what I'm going to do is just put in some pieces like this. So I'll add them in here. You could quarter them or even shred them if you wanted. I have a whole bunch of shredded zucchini in my freezer for making zucchini bread in the winter. So I'm just going to throw in some zucchini in here as well. The other half, like I said, I'm going to shred it up and make some zucchini bread. Okay, now I have this lovely Italian garlic that I also grew here at Organic Oasis, and I'm going to go ahead and put 2 cloves. I'm going to go ahead and mince them and put 2 cloves into the soup. I think it's going to taste delicious with some garlic. Okay, so I've got my garlic peeled, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut them in half. 3 pieces for that one. I'm going to put them in here. Now you could go ahead and add, if you wanted to put garlic in, which it's not required, it's optional. You could go ahead and I'm going to squeeze them. I don't know if you can see. I'm squeezing this right in here. You could go ahead and put the clove in little pieces and stick it in your herb bag. That way you would get the flavor, some garlic flavor without garlic pieces floating in your soup. Again, that's totally optional though. You don't need to use garlic if you don't like it. And if you happen to like pieces of garlic or whole cloves, that's good too. You could let some cloves float around in the soup. You could, like I said, put them in the little herb bag. So there's just the garlic flavor, but no cloves actually in it. I just want to put the whole thing in here. Because mainly when you use a crock pot, it cooks so long, just things get broken down and everything gets sort of blended together and makes a delicious flavor. So the last thing that I'm going to add to my soup is I'm going to add a tomato from our garden. I'm actually going to be canning tomato soup later today, but right now I have all these tomatoes sitting here and I just thought I like to do this because, in the winter, there's no tomatoes, okay? So I can't, when I make this soup in the winter, I can't add fresh tomatoes. So I want to take advantage of this season that I can actually put in tomatoes, fresh ones. So that's why I want to do this. But this tomato has some blemishes on it, which I want to cut off. So I'm just going to be kind of cutting a little bit here, and then I'll stay tuned and I'll show you what I do next. So the last thing I'm going to add to the soup, like I said, are tomatoes. And I went ahead and took the tomato and I cut off the blemishes. And what I do is sometimes I just chop up the tomatoes and put them right into the soup. But my favorite way to put tomatoes in this soup is to blend them up, puree them, and add them. And then it just is amazing how the broth takes on sort of a tomatoey flavor. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, and I'll be right back. So now I just take this tomato puree. I pour it right in here like this. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to one more time pick up the chicken. And just kind of stir all of this in together. And then lay the chicken back, nestle it right here, right back in here like this. And now it's time to cook it. The soup is in the crock pot. I use the Ninja cooking system. This is my crock pot. I love it. I've had it for several years now. It works great. You can do other things with this gadget, but usually I just use it solely as a slow cooker. So I'm going to go ahead and put it on low. The recipe recommends low for 4 to 6 hours. And normally, again, in my history of cooking this over 400 times, I have normally cooked it for 8 hours for a full day. Gone to work, come home, it's been cooking 8 hours, and it's been wonderful. So you can do that. Low, normally, it's like I'm in a big hurry and I need it to cook quick. I will do the 4 hours. But to be honest, the longer you cook this, the better, because remember, we have a chicken carcass and we need to get that meat to fall off the bones. And we want to get as much of the delicious, nutritious things out of the bones. So cook it as long as you can. Probably go with low for 8 hours. And for me, I'm just going to go low for 6 hours today. So I will come back after 6 hours and just sneak preview. We do add some pasta to this. So stick with this recipe so we can see how to finish up the soup at the end of the day and how to end up with a delicious, super family meal or meal for you, your loved ones, and it will be awesome, I promise. The soup has been cooking for 6 hours. And I actually finished cooking it last night, and I just put it in my refrigerator overnight. And now today is another day, and I just put it back in the crock pot, heated it up. Now I'm ready to continue with this recipe. So again, if you do have to stop at some point, it's okay if your soup has been cooking in the crock pot to go ahead and stop the process. You can refrigerate it and then put it back in the crock pot and heat it back up and continue. So that's what I did. Here we have the chicken. I'm going to drain some of the liquid out here. And then what I do is I have this casserole dish right here. And I'm going to put the chicken in here. I'll show you in a minute. I'm also going to fish out the herb. I'm going to just grab it here, fish out the herb, drain it, and set it to the side as well. So here we have just the broth. And you can see it's got the zucchini in it, the carrots, all the vegetables, and some tomatoes. And it just is this wonderful, delicious broth. And it has some of the nutrients from bone broth, from cooking those bones for hours and hours. So now I'm going to move this aside and we'll come back to the next step. So when I get to this process, I have my bowl that you can see over here, my soup pot, which when I take the chicken off, I'll be putting the chicken into the soup. I also have another small bowl where I put the bones, and that goes into my city's compost. I have a third bowl, and this is going to be any scraps of grizzle, parts of the chicken that I don't necessarily want to eat. And this is going to go in here for our dogs. And then I will feed part of this with the dog's food until it's all gone. My dogs love it when I make this soup. Now the herb bag here is just, I'm going to squeeze out as much of the juice as I can, broth that I can get out of here. And then again, this is just going to go, the rest of the herbs here are going to go into my compost bin. And again, I like it when I make my bag. When I use the actual mesh bag, it's so much better. But because the chicken stays contained, and then I just wash the bag and keep reusing it for my soups. But the cheesecloth works too. It's just that I can't reuse this, and I'm going to have to get rid of this. And I like to reuse things. So I like the fact that when I use my mesh bag, I can just reuse it. Now, you have to let the chicken cool a little bit, otherwise you can burn your hands. But see, so for instance, this skin and this part, I don't like. This is going to go to my dogs. The bone will go over here. And then I will just start taking all the pieces of the chicken and separating them into skin and parts that I don't want to eat. And I go through the chicken. There's some parts here that it looks like it's kind of this part of the gizzards. The neck is going to go out here. So I will let it cool a little bit more. It's a little hot for me, but I will pick off these pieces like this. The bone goes in one pot, the chicken goes in the other. Now this nice piece here, see this nice, wonderful piece of chicken breast. I will go ahead and separate this out and put this in my soup. So I'm going to take this chicken, now it's cooled off a little bit, and I'm going to start to separate it and just kind of shred it with my hands and put it right into the soup. Now if you have a lot of chicken left on here, you may want to just put it in a bowl and then add some of it to the soup. And then sometimes what I'll do is I'll keep a bowl of chicken for to make enchiladas or something else. So you can put all the leftover chicken, depending on how much you have off of your carcass. You can put as much as you want into your soup. The other thing is, once you're doing this, like I said, if you have excess chicken, you can just save it and use it for something else. Put it in a salad. I like to make enchiladas with it. In fact, today I probably will get another bowl and save some of the white meat to make enchiladas, since I have so much chicken meat, I don't need that much in my soup. The soup is going to be nice and filling from all the vegetables. So I'm going to get another bowl going here. So here I have another bowl. So as I get chicken meat off of here, now I have an extra bowl. So one bowl will be for my surplus chicken to make enchiladas. I'll have some for the soup. And then a lot of this is just going to go to my dogs, because like, see these pieces here? I don't necessarily like the cartilage, but the dogs, it's actually very nutritious for them. I don't give them bones, but I give them cartilage. Sometimes I'll throw some white meat in also, but now you could, I suppose, take the bones and go ahead and do another cooking of just the bones and maybe cook them for a couple hours, or a couple days, which some people do. But I find that just making this soup the way I do it in the crock pot for 6 to 8 hours, I feel like I get enough out of the bones. But as you can see, the chicken, there's just a lot of parts here. And a lot of the meat, I just don't necessarily like it. So the dogs get a lot of this, and they love it. I mix it with their regular food, just a little bit at a time. But see, there's a lot of meat and different things in here with the bones. You don't have to be as meticulous as me, but I like to know that I'm using all of the parts of the chicken. So this part here, I just squeeze all the broth out of it, and then this house unfortunately has to go into the garbage. I'm not going to reuse that. Also, I don't give a lot of the skin to my dogs. It has a lot of the fat in the skin, so I will pick out the skin. I give some to them, but I just don't want to give all the skin to them. There's a lot of, I go through here, make sure there's no bones sitting on the bottom in the broth. Just keep working at it. I've got some good meat left here. So if you have a large family, and you roast one chicken, you probably may not have a lot of meat left, which is okay. As long as you have enough for your soup, and the flavor from the bones will still go into your soup. Even if you don't have a lot of meat, the soup will still have flavor of chicken and will still be very good. However, Tim and I, we don't, it's just us. So that's why we have so much meat left on on the bone after a meal. We just, we each eat a piece of the chicken breast, so we have a lot more meat left here. But even if you don't, the soup will still turn out great. You'll have the flavor of the chicken in the soup. I don't really like a lot of chicken in my soup. I like all the vegetables, the broth, and then we still have another step we need to add. We need to add pasta, which we're going to do next. But I want to show you everything I need to do here. Okay. Okay, so this, I'm just going to dump it all in for the dogs. So I'm going to take this bowl here, dump this all in. So as you can see, my dogs are really lucky. We have 2. So this is all what I got for the dogs here. There's no bones in here. There is some skin. I'm going to actually pick out some of the bigger pieces of skin like this. I'll keep some skin in here. Take some of the skin out. Some of it has a lot of meat on it. But so most of this I'm going to leave in and feed to the dogs. So this, here's a big piece. But see, it's got a lot of chicken still on it. So I'll pick that off and then put some of the skin in here. It's just, probably dogs in the wild, they could eat the skin, all the bones, everything, and digest it just fine. Our dogs are domesticated. They're not used to eating this. I don't want to make them sick. So I'm going to pick out, I'm not going to give them bones. I'm not going to give them a lot of the skin. It's a lot of fat, and I don't want them to get sick, get it like diarrhea or anything like that. So anyway, so here we have a nice bowl of stuff to mix in with my dog's food. Then I have this, which I'm not going to put in my compost. I don't put meat products in my compost, but we're going to put this in our city compost. Then I have this, a second bowl of chicken, that nice shredded chicken now that I'll be using for enchiladas, either tomorrow night or the next night. And then for our soup, here we have this lovely bowl of the broth with the chicken and vegetables. And now we need to add our pasta. The chicken soup with its delicious broth and vegetables is finished, but there's one more step that we need to do. So we need to add pasta to it. And it's 6 ounces of pasta dry, measured dry. And there's 2 ways that you can do this. So one is you can take your 6 ounces of pasta and cook it in boiling water on the stove. I use my Instant Pot, and I just put in 2 cups of water. I don't usually measure it, but I put in at least 2 cups of water, and I put my pasta in there and I cook it. It's usually, you would cook it for half the time that the instructions say. So if your pasta normally on a stove would take 10 minutes boiling, you would do the Instant Pot for 5 minutes. In this case, with this pasta I'm using, it's just some pasta I had left over. I'm only going to go 3 minutes. And part of it is you want the pasta to be a little al dente because this is soup. You're going to be heating the soup up. If you don't eat it all in one day, you're going to be heating it up multiple times, and the pasta will just get softer and softer every time. So I find even taking my pasta that's al dente and putting it into the refrigerator in the refrigerator overnight, sometimes it'll absorb more moisture and become softer the next day. So I just recommend that you do your pasta al dente. Now, if you're really in a hurry, and I have done this, I have put my crock pot has a setting where it has a stovetop setting where I can actually turn the setting on high, and I could boil this bowl of soup right in my crock pot. If you have that setting, I have put my pasta directly into this and boiled it and cooked it in the soup. And that's when I'm super busy. I just put it on the stovetop setting. And when this comes to a simmer, I throw in the pasta and let it cook for about 8 minutes. and then it's great. And I don't have to cook the pasta separate. And the only thing about doing that is if you do that, then you do have the risk of the soup getting a little of the starch, whatever's in the pasta. You know how sometimes when you cook your pasta, the water gets kind of white, almost like some starch is coming off, or maybe it's just flour. But if you don't like that, then you don't want to cook the pasta in your soup. I've done it both ways, and to me, I don't really notice a difference. I feel like it's a little cleaner to cook your pasta. If you're really concerned with the texture of your pasta, it's probably better to cook your pasta and then at the end throw your cooked pasta into your cooked soup. But if you're in a hurry, there's no reason why you couldn't boil your soup or simmer your soup and cook your pasta right in the soup with it. That's your choice. I'm going to go ahead and Instant Pot my pasta, and I will come back and add it in. The pasta is done from my Instant Pot. It's perfect. It came out perfect. Just 3 minutes in the Instant Pot with a quick release. I'm going to add it into my soup. You can use any kind of pasta you want. I happen to have an open bag of this, the little seashell pasta, so I threw that in. And here it is. So the soup is technically finished. And doesn't this look delicious? And I cannot wait to eat this for dinner. The soup is done. The pasta has been added to it. And here's this delicious soup. I'm going to plate it right now. Tim and I are going to have some for dinner. And what I like to put on this soup is Parmesan cheese. It just goes really, really, really good on this soup. The soup is finished. It's so delicious and it's so wonderful. I usually just eat it with tortilla chips. You can eat it with a hearty sourdough bread. You can eat it with a seeded bread, with biscuits, muffins. There's so many different ways to eat this soup. You can add rice instead of pasta. You can add any vegetables that you want to use up that's in your refrigerator, or if you have an abundance of vegetables that you need to harvest, you can throw in those as well. It is just absolutely flexible and so easy. Throw it in your crock pot, go off to work, come home. You have to add a little bit of pasta or rice, and then you're ready to eat it. And this is such a basic soup that you could tweak it. I bet your kids could love it. I know I've made this, like I said, for 40 plus years, and my kids have eaten it, my grandkids have eaten it, and I've never heard any complaints. So good luck making your soup, and good luck with your garden journey. And if you like these videos, please subscribe. Thanks.